The most dangerous ideas about the mind are usually half-true. Some of the most dangerous ideas about the mind are not false. That is exactly why they spread. They contain enough truth to feel intelligent, enough familiarity to feel personal, enough coherence to feel like clarity, and then quietly they begin to replace reality with a smaller story. What harms us most is often not the obvious error, but the explanation that is partly true and therefore easier to trust. A half-truth is persuasive because it gives the mind what it wants most, under uncertainty, not full understanding, but early coherence. It gives shape before depth, language before precision, explanation before examination. And once an explanation feels coherent, people stop looking, not because they are careless, but because coherence feels like resolution. That is why partial truths can become more dangerous than falsehoods. Falsehoods often provoke resistance. Half-truths invite identification. They do not arrive as lies. They arrive as relief. Take one of the most common explanations in modern life. It's just stress. Sometimes that is true. Stress can alter sleep, attention, immunity, pain, memory, and appetite. But once the explanation becomes too available, it starts swallowing distinctions that matter. A person may be exhausted, grieving, sleep-deprived, depressed, hormonally altered, or physically ill, and yet the language around them keeps compressing everything into one elegant phrase: stress. The phrase is not absurd, it is incomplete. And the danger of an incomplete explanation is not only that it misses detail, it changes what is investigated, what is postponed, what is normalized, and what the person begins to believe about themselves. Or take trauma. Trauma has given many people a language for pain that had been minimized for too long. That matters. But once a concept becomes culturally powerful, it begins to expand beyond its useful boundaries. Then not every conflict, not every fear, not every hesitation, not every emotional difficulty is examined in its own structure. Everything starts being interpreted through one dominant frame. Again, the problem is not that trauma is unreal. The problem is that a real thing can become too total as an explanation. And once that happens, interpretation narrows, complexity thins, and other possibilities disappear from view. The same thing happens with ideas like dopamine, attention, mindset, or cognitive bias, any concept strong enough to travel from science into public vocabulary. Once an idea enters common language, it often loses its edges first, then its limits, then its discipline. People begin not only to use it, but to live inside it. And that is the moment to become careful. A psychological idea becomes dangerous not when it is false, but when it becomes too easy, too portable, too emotionally satisfying to question. So what do we do with that? Not reject useful ideas, not become cynical, not pretend that every explanation is equally weak. What we need is a more disciplined relationship to truth. A better question is not, is this idea true? A better question is this: true of what? True to what extent? Under what conditions? And what does it leave out when applied too quickly? That shift sounds small, but it changes almost everything. It changes medicine, because premature explanation can delay real diagnosis. It changes psychology, because naming something is not the same as understanding it. And it changes ordinary life, because many people are not trapped by total ignorance. They are trapped by explanations that are helpful too early and too small for what they are living through. That is one of the central ideas behind my new book, The Half-Truth Brain. Not that truth is useless, but that truth becomes dangerous when it forgets it is partial. If this kind of thinking speaks to you, the fuller essay and the book are below.